Thank you very much. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Bishop Chancellor Sanchez Sorondo and the President of the Academy to be able to be here and to give a talk. Secondly, I'd like to excuse that you will hear the one or the other topic for the second or third time, as I'm the third speaker of our branch. And thirdly, you already got it aware it doesn't function. But you can imagine if this red dot would go a little bit further down, you can see the logo of our zoo, the elephant, and underneath its tail, between the hind legs, you see the towers of the Cologne Cathedral. So we are very much connected already with the church. Good. So let me start with a question. Why are we here? And in his Laudatio Si, Pope Francis mentioned that the Earth's resources are also being plundered because of short-sighted approaches to the economy, commerce, and production. The loss of forests and woodlands entails the loss of species which may constitute extremely important resources in the future, not only for food, but also for curing disease and other uses. Each year sees the disappearance of thousands of plant and animal species, which we will never know, which our children will never see, because they have been lost forever. The great majority become extinct for reasons related to human activity. We have no such right. Unfortunately, this is true. We, as a zoo community, we all here in the room fully agree on that. We have to agree on that. And most of the problems nature is facing now are created by humans. Therefore, we need to act. It is our responsibility, and therefore I'm thankful that you brought us all together. And it's not only, to make that clear, it's not only for nature, it's at the end for humankind, for the survivorship of our own species. Modern zoological gardens and aquariums have changed in the last decades. Although still today some people see our institutions mainly as leisure attractions, zoological gardens and aquariums were able to position themselves as sites of conservation learning, conservation action, and research. And you see here just one example that is about the actual EASA Silent Forest campaign, where we inform visitors about the problems birds are facing, especially in Asia, with a lot of illegal trade going on. As president-elect of the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums and zoo director of Cologne Zoo, I'm absolutely convinced that scientifically, and I underline that, scientifically run zoos are on the track. But there is still potential to improve. Beside the knowledge about keeping and breeding wild animal species, conservation, education, our visitors, the societies, are our real potential. Therefore, the title of my talk, Zoos Mobilizing the Public for Legislative Change, is not only a headline, but a main goal of our institutions. With a mantle of economic and public accountability, zoos and aquariums need not only to understand and promote conservation learning, but also to work on the change of the necessary legislation and behavior of people. Research suggests that however strongly individuals pursue sustainable lifestyles, the overall indicator of whether or not a sustainability initiative will be effective is the involvement of government. And we are all aware we have a problem with overpopulation. Less and less habitats are left for the animals. We are facing these global problems with overpopulation, with pollution, and of course with climate change. So the sustainable use becomes more and more important, and we have heard that already this morning. Since the first Earth Summit in Stockholm in 1972, it has been apparent that the largest challenges, namely those involving over-intensive human exploitation of nature by human growth, must be addressed through the interaction of governments. We should remember that due to conflict relating to sustainability being too big for individual member states to handle, therefore we established the Earth Summit as a platform for member states to collaborate. Governments are most often motivated to act in concert when requested to do so by those they govern, especially in the high-consuming industrialized nations. That means the societies, that means people, that means voters, that means our visitors. Zoos and zoo associations, like der Verband der Zoologischen Gärten, the European Association of Zoos and Aquaria, or the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums, WAZA, therefore should not be afraid, and besides talking to politicians and government employees, form a part of the environmental lobby and should motivate the visitors to demand action. That is why we are here. And this can be done by education, lobbying, involvement of the public, and campaigning. So let me start with education. As a modern zoo and aquarium increasingly see themselves as centers of education and conservation, their mission is to be leaders in both. More and more zoos create exhibits where education and conservation increasingly complement and reinforce each other. It's not only anymore about animals, like you can see here in the Bronx Zoo, the gorilla exhibit, or here in Cologne Zoo with the hippodome. We give much more information. We get, as a visitor, information about animals, about the general aspects such as sustainable use, cultural aspects, human-animal conflicts, farming, ranching, etc., etc. And often we have a combination with in-situ work as well. A lot of us have zoo schools, teachers, volunteers. You have heard that already from Gloria. But I want to mention that we have this year, these are the sustainable development the Education for Sustainable Development, ESD, in Germany, which is a clear task for the education. And we have implemented that already not only in Germany, but we start to do it more and more in our zoos. And another thing I want to mention is that we need to get people more and more, wait, I was too fast. More and more involved. And we have this year the Sustainable Development Goals, adopted by all United Nations members in 2015. These are also now more and more a part of our education. So we have to give our visitors a view what they can do themselves to have a better planet. And you have heard that by Thomas already, our favor are our animals. And we need to get people really to fall in love with animals, and that they really take care about what they see. You know, at the end, people will only care of what they know and what they love. What about lobbying? Since some decades, zoological gardens and aquariums have started lobbying at governmental and intergovernmental forums on behalf of nature. We do it in concert with other organizations like today, and all levels from local governments up to the UN. Another resource I'm using is our expertise concerning the threat of different species, as we have heard already from the museum side. We work with traffic with WWF, and one example I can give you here, that is a tiger gecko, genus Goniurosaurus, a very rare species in Vietnam, that could be one of the next species sold into extinction. Therefore, my zoo and others have tried to list it on the CITES list. We did that together with Vietnamese colleagues, and we just recently tried to get that through together with China and Vietnam to be listed. But of course, you know that the Sri Lanka meeting was postponed. We have done that already with this nice species here. It's a crocodile lizard, a species for which we have established a breeding and introduction program in Vietnam, and just recently, you see it, had the first youngsters in our zoo. So this is already listed through the help of a zoological garden. Another example for lobbying is palm oil. You know, here you see the current president of the WAZA. Jenny Gray, is signing the Round Table Sustainable Palm Oil Cooperation. We are a member of it. We are an active partner, so we can influence it. We are not just listening, and you can believe we are a big market. So if we only sell sustainable products, we can really make a difference. We have the power to change, and as a friend of mine would say, there is no better ambassador than an orangutan. The use of other sustainability labels, for example, the Marine Stewardship Council, MSC, or the Forest Stewardship Council, FSC, are also an option how we can influence not only the market, but also the behavior of our visitors. And at Cologne Zoo, not only the guests in the restaurant get served MSC fish, but all our fish eaters, the pelicans, the sea lions, the crocodiles. So we pray not only, but we also do what we pray. And thirdly, involvement. How can we activate people? Involvement of the public in specific tasks such as beach cleaning, forest restoration, etc., which build an affinity for nature and illustrate the issues firsthand, are some of the tools. We have heard that already, but also done by zoos and aquariums. Many zoos have active children or youth groups, volunteers who are interested in such work. We need to reach out to the young people. One example is the Green Teen team here. This organization was founded in 2014 by Princess Theodora von Liechtenstein, who is not only the founder but also an active participant, and we as WADA try to cooperate with them to get the youth active and helping us. So last but not least, campaigning. Zoos around the world can run campaigns, and the European Association of Zoos and Aquariums, her chairman is here, we do it for almost 2 decades. We must demonstrate the value of conservation to conserve biodiversity by clarifying its meaning for endangered species and the wider global context. Therefore, we have these campaigns, and unfortunately, the numbers are very small, but at the end, the outcome is very big. The sheet shows what has been achieved in the years of campaigning. The members of EASA really made a difference for the protection of biodiversity in many parts of the world. To sum it up, more than 5 million euro were raised for conservation projects around the world. More than 140 conservation projects have received grants, and so on, and so on. And you have probably heard that the first campaign was the ape conservation, especially the bushmeat campaign, and this was an extraordinary successful campaign because we were able to collect 1.9 million signatures by our visitors. And that was one of the largest petitions ever submitted to the European Parliament. In our EASA report you can read, as a result of this petition and the debates it initiated, in 2004 the Parliament adopted a report that recognized the issue of bushmeat as important in relation to wildlife conservation, human food security and livelihoods, and human health. The impact of bushmeat has now been included as one of the factors to be considered in assessing applications for EU funding. So we really pushed and influenced the legislation. At the end, several projects were funded for Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance, for the Berggorilla and Regenwald Direkthilfe. You see, the gorilla was one of the species we were going for. So let me summarize and give a little bit of vision. You should remember that a survey conducted by WASA in collaboration with national and regional associations showed that the annual visitor number is over 700 million. On the one side, this figure may include multiple individual visits, yes, but on the other side, it is most certainly underestimated, as still today new zoos are established and are opened all around the globe. So the world zoo community is a global player. And we should be aware that, yes, people are still interested in nature, and a lot of them, as you can see on the picture, probably the one or the other you recognize, they meet the animals not in the wild, they meet them in our zoos. The zoo and aquarium community reportedly spent about 350 million euro on wildlife conservation alone in 2008. Certainly it was or is more, and because not every zoo gave us the data. Mainly the money came from America, North America and Europe, but all the other areas of the world, they are developing and it's changing, as you can see here on the slide. And especially WASA, the regional association and its members, want to make a difference. Therefore, we intensively need to cooperate also with the other partners, such as the botanical gardens, universities, NGOs, politicians, and all the other players. And before we start the discussion, I would really like to address that I would really hope that it is not just a publication of the outcome of this meeting. Maybe we can really sign something and we can start an alliance of the natural history museums, of the botanical gardens, of the zoological gardens, and of course with the religious background, the churches, that we really make a difference in the future. And that is very necessary because you probably all know about the one plan approach. So for a lot of species, it's too late that the one or the other of us tries to do it on his own. We need to work together. One goal we have in mind, we're discussing that recently, is the World Species Congress, which was thought about for almost 10 years now by the IUCN. And we would like to push it forward a little bit. We had a first meeting, just the zoos, and we thought maybe it has to be an outcome, not only a conference, but something like a movement, something like what we heard already today, the Friday demonstrations, but with a real outcome where we can be able to force the leaders, the politicians, the key players, the decision makers to change what we think is right. And I'm absolutely convinced, and we heard that today, the experts are sitting in here and not somewhere else. So WASA and its members want to make a difference, and I would finally just to say what a friend of mine did, who is a retired zoo director, and he said, if zoos would not exist today, we would have to invent them now, and that would be a little bit the answer to my left. I'm absolutely convinced that the question isn't it, will they close us in the future? You will not be able to see animals anywhere else if we don't change what is going on outside. So, and as Pope Francis said, we cannot fail to praise the commitment of international agencies and civil society organizations, which draw public attention to these issues and offer critical cooperation, employing legitimate means of pressure to ensure that each government carries out its proper and inalienable responsibility to preserve its country's environment and natural resources without capitulating to spurious local or international interests. I think you cannot say it better, and that is my end of my talk. I thank you very much, and I have just brought some of you on the slide, and I just want to mention that no one of us would be sitting here if we would not have had contact with animals, with plants, with nature in general. So, and that is something which makes me afraid a little if I see how the young generation grows up in this virtual world with their mobiles, with their internet, where they don't know if it is night or day. And that is something we all together have to go for. And I really hope that I can leave this place with the confidence that we in the future really cooperate and make a big step forward. We need a big change and not a slow death, as we heard today. Thank you.